Hello and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Information. I'm Jeannie Green. Thank you so much for joining me. Did you know that much of the land in Alaska is private property? It's that time of year now where every highway is filled with RVs. In fact, many local residents are out enjoying the good, beautiful Alaskan country, as well as outsiders, and that leads to just a small problem. Much of the land they're camping on and trespassing on is private property. We'll take a look at trespassing in Ahtna country right after this. Heartbeat Alaska is pleased to announce a brand new official hotel. We're brought to you now by Millennium Alaskan Hotel, the official hotel of Heartbeat Alaska. And
Heartbeat Alaska is also brought to you by Frontier Flying Service. Thank you, Frontier, for getting Heartbeat Alaska airborne.
Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Brown's Electric Lighting Gallery. Thank you, Brown's Electric, for your generous support of Heartbeat Alaska.
We've been covering businesses, families, and individuals since before Alaska was a state. And we'll keep doing it until the glaciers melt on Mount McKinley. Primera Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alaska. We're here. We're with you.
Heartbeat Alaska is made possible by Kupik Carlisle Transportation, your full-service transportation and logistics company.
Welcome back. Have you ever wondered what this beautiful state looked like over 100 years ago? Well, that memory is still fresh in the minds of the good people in the Ahtna country. And over a short period of time, changes came, changes brought by World War II, changes brought by the railroad going through and the gold rush, of course. And the people in Ahtna country have endured these changes over time, but now some things are becoming intolerable. Let's take a look at trespassing in Ahtna country. Each spring brought the return of salmon, ducks, and geese. Summers were spent gathering berries and drying fish. In the fall, they hunted moose, caribou, and bear, and throughout the winter, they trapped beaver and other animals for their fur and meat. And so it went, season to season, generation to generation. But just as surely as the changing of the seasons, the gentle subsistence ways of these Alaska natives was bound for change, and that change came in the sparkle of gold. Hundreds upon hundreds of miners rushed and heavily traveled the trail in the late 1800s from Valdez to Eagle, Alaska, followed by the construction of the Richardson Highway from Valdez all the way to Fairbanks, Alaska. With the winds of war sweeping across Europe and eventually reaching America in the 1940s, the western ways of the white culture came bulldozing through Ahtna country by way of the Alcan Highway. Spurred on by the Japanese invasion of the Aleutian Islands, the U.S. Army was assigned the task of connecting Alaska to the lower 48 states. The Alcan Highway was constructed with breathtaking speed and is considered by many to be one of the greatest construction projects ever undertaken by modern man. But what many people did not consider was how this highway would affect the residents of the isolated areas that it came crashing through. Where people once lived out their entire lives without ever encountering a stranger, there was now an unending stream of people from all walks of life searching for adventure, opportunity, and home sites in what appeared on the surface to be a vast, uninhabited wilderness. Vast, perhaps, but certainly not uninhabited. Millie Buck remembers how it was in the time before the highway.
We were very respectful of each other, each other's land, each other's belongings. You never needed a lock way back then, because everybody was so respectful. If they used any of your wood or your food, they'll put it back before they leave. My grandparents were real subsistence people. I mean real subsistence people.
Well, the Ahtna people have been in this area for, time immemorial. And they're a nomadic tribe. They followed the subsistence way of life. We're clannish. I'm the Caribou clan, and my clan went where the Caribou went. We traveled with the Caribou, and we lived off the Caribou.
When the highway was completed, the uninhibited nomadic ways of the Ahtna people seemed to be finished too. In 1971, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act allotted parcels of land to the native tribes in Alaska. Based on population and traditional use, these parcels were intended to aid the natives in maintaining their subsistence lifestyles. But merely defining these plots of land did little to help the indigenous people protect it from interlopers. And now, more than 30 years later, trespassing is causing major problems all across the native allotments in Alaska, especially those that are on or near the road system.
We're experiencing a lot of this because we're on the road system. We have, I think, probably 70% of the road system within our region boundary in the state of Alaska. This road system, we're accessible to Anchorage, to Kenai, to Valdez, to Fairbanks, to the lower 48, and we're connected all over. Well, the problem, I think, is that the state of Alaska doesn't prosecute or investigate trespassers like they would on like my private home. Most of the time, if an individual would call and say there's people trashing or crossing their land without their permission, they would go down and investigate it and in some instances prosecute them. However, on a native corporation lands, they have different rules and guidelines to deal with it. We have to make a case. We have to actually find them there. We have to actually do a lot of things before the state troopers and them actually come down and investigate. And most of the time, their excuse is that they don't have the manpower to do it. So, and it's widespread.
Each week, Heartbeat Alaska brings you great stories from all over the state. And we couldn't do it without the generous support of Frontier Flying Service. Frontier gets our camera crews where they need to go. So whenever you see a Frontier plane, give them a wave.
Say hi from Nutsat.
You might just be on Heartbeat Alaska.
Frontier Flying Service, covering Alaska for over 50 years.
From the moment you enter the doorway at the Millennium Hotel, another world surrounds you. It's a world of friendly faces and cordial service. It's a place of great taste and great tastes. The Millennium Hotel is a haven of relaxation and personal restoration, of attentive service and attention to details. But at the end of the day, we won't read you a bedtime story. Although, would you be surprised if we did?
Let's go back to Ahtna country now and take a look at how trespassing are affecting the good people that live there, not only affecting the lives of the landowners in Ahtna country, but also affecting the health of the people that live along the rivers.
Well, we have an area that is one of the most easy accessed areas in the state of Alaska. Have several roads that lead people to this area. You have people that come up from the lower 48 via the Alcan. You have people coming from Anchorage via the Glen Highway, and the Richardson Highway that runs from Valdez all the way up to Fairbanks. And the Denali Highway that comes from the Parks Highway over to the Richardson. You have the Toke Highway, which goes from Toke down to our area here. All of them lead to some of the most accessible areas that there's a lot of state land, a lot of federal lands, then there are a lot of private properties as well. And when you have a lot of land like this in this area and it's easily accessible, it creates an issue called trespass, and that's what we deal with on a regular basis. We try and find ways to limit those impacts, but it's not an easy issue, and getting a response from the state and federal agencies is very difficult. So a lot of the pressures that are placed on our resources in this area, we have subsistence resources, moose, caribou, salmon, sheep, and several different resources that get identified or get targeted by these people that come via the road systems to do recreational activities and personal activities and so on, and subsistence activities as well. But they don't always get permission to go on private properties to do so, and when they don't do that, that's trespass.
Some of the problems, lack of enforcement. I think a lot of it too is lack of education to the public of what corporation lands are, and lack of prosecution. Our problem is that we have, especially during the moose season, hunting season, is a high population comes in and they are all on corporate lands, most of them, a majority of them. And to us, I mean, that's supposed to be our hunting grounds, so I mean, that really causes a problem within our community. And a lot of times, they're the outside people are the ones getting the moose, and we're not really getting anything. So, and I think it causes our people to, hunt out of season, to, hunt, not within state regulations in order to get their meat.
It's been a problem. It's been in the back of our minds for a number of years, and we decided to hold a summit today to get a collective of agencies and group of organizations together and try to come up with some resolve.
In March of this year, Ahtna Corporation organized a summit to discuss the problems of trespass and explore possible solutions to this widespread problem. Attending the meeting were representatives from native corporations, state land managers, federal land experts, and officers from the Alaska State Troopers Fish and Wildlife Division.
This trespass summit that we put together and we host had a lot of different agencies attended, as well as other regional corporations, and hopefully through that there are some recommendations that will come out of that summit for solutions for the state, as well as some maybe federal solutions. We deal not only with the state but BLM and the National Park Service, since we have joint interested lands.
The first task of the Trespass Summit was to define the problem, so everyone in attendance had a clear understanding of who is trespassing and how widespread the problem really is.
We have several places where people they'll pull off the road with their RVs, they'll pull off in their little station wagons or their trucks and pitch a tent in just any driveway that they find along the road. And they don't know the land status there, they don't know, they may be within the right-of-way, but that's not the intended purpose of the right-of-way. We have violations of right-of-ways. The right-of-way is reserved for public transportation from point A to point B, and it's intended only to go from point A to point B, not for recreational use like happens several times over. When you drive along the highways in this area in the summertime, you're going to see RVs pulled off at just about any gravel pit, any driveway, any little pull-off that they can find, and they're doing that so that they don't have to pay for use of an RV park. They're trying to do things most efficient and economic, to their situation. And if they can get away with it, that they're going to do so. And it doesn't only happen just for tourism. It's also a hunting situation. We have a lot of hunters that come out to this area. I mean, Unit 13 and Unit 11 are two of the biggest hit areas for hunting resources in moose and caribou and other animals. And these people know this. So they come out and they find these little places, they park their vehicles for 2-3 weeks at a time while they're out on their 4-wheelers, 6-wheelers, or even larger vehicles, and hunting to get their animals. There might be a party of 6, so they stay out until a majority of their people or their time is done and get as many animals as they can, and then they come back. And that's not an intended purpose or the correct use of a right-of-way. A right-of-way is for going from point A to point B. But there's no enforcement to make these people stop doing that.
I live right on the banks there, right on the bank there on the side of the Gokena River where the Richardson Highway crosses, the bridge there. One problem we have there every year is the fishermen, the tourist comes up. Every year we get maybe about 100 to 500 people there. And the problem we have there is they walk anywhere they want to walk there. Fishing game maybe comes up once a week, or maybe not even that. They check for licenses. There's nobody watching them there. So they do what they want to do over there. They shoot, party, keeps the village up at all nights, all time, you know. We hear a lot of music playing and stuff across the river. And another thing that causes a problem there, it's not really with trespass, is that they've been over there, we've been having trouble with the state. Our former village land is across the river there. That's where they have like a campsite over there for the campers, dumping their sewer and stuff over there. The state never provide any sewage dumping tank or anything over there. They just dumping it on the ground. Problem we got there is that we have a well, our drinking water is right on the river. We have these motor boats going up and down the river, sewage dumping, so, you know, the state still doesn't recognize that. That's the problem we have with the state. They ought to close that area off, move that campground up somewhere else where they can have proper dumping for sewer and garbage, and take some of them boats out of there, because that's the water we drink.
There's easements across it. There's one trail called Eagle Trail. It starts at right within our village, and it goes right through corporate lands all the way up to state public lands. For the regulations on the Eagle Trail is that it's only supposed to be ATVs, and yet they come in with these trucks that have, I mean, big, huge tires. You know, you stand by it, it's almost tall as you, the tires alone, you know, and that tears up the trail. And a lot of times, you know, where there is bad spots in the trail, they've gone and made their own trail around it, you know. But they also go through 2 creeks and a river, which are spawning areas for the salmon. And those salmon spawn, and they come all the way up from the ocean, the Copper River, Salina River, up to these creeks. Mentasa is basically the headwaters, I say, for the Copper and Salina.
We had an incident from a person in Valdez came up and flew into the park and hunted and killed a moose on our land. And he said that, you know, he's been doing it for many years, and he's not going to stop just because it's our land. You know, he thinks he has the right to go over there and do it. But in actuality, you know, these are private lands, and most people just don't view it that way.
I think that for Native Alaskans, and particularly the Ahtna people, trespass is an issue of being treated as a second-class citizen. It's apparent from not only the state's attitude, but the federal government's attitude, that native land, which they hold in fee simple title, is not the same as private land that you and I might own and build our houses on. If I have a problem with trespass on my property, it seems that the state's more than willing to respond to those needs to help me protect my land. Whereas for Native Corporation land, the same type of cooperation, so to speak, the same type of protection is not afforded to Native corporations.
I can listen.
I can cook.
Good. I can coach.
Kids with something to do are less likely to do drugs.
I can drive.
I can paint.
I can dance.
A little of your time can make a lifetime of difference.
I can read.
I can help.
You can help. Call toll-free 1-877-KIDS-313 to find out about community drug prevention programs.
I can keep a kid off drugs.
The issue of trespassing in the Ahtna region is a complex one with many layers. And although there are discussions and solutions in the works, it's still very, very important that those that use the lands, the hunters, the hikers, those that trespass, recreational users, Alaska residents, and outsiders, the solution lies in their hands. From all of the testimony and evidence, it's clear that the privately owned corporation land is being violated by a variety of people. In some cases, the trespass seems to be intentional, but in others, the perpetrators are encroaching the private property by accident, and often it's this uneducated trespasser that can be the most difficult to deal with.
Normal people who access land in Alaska presume it's public land. And in order for us to prove trespass, whether it be criminal trespass 1 or criminal trespass 2, there's a certain mental state we have to prove that these people had, or that they entered or remained unlawfully, or that they didn't know, or that they knew that the land was properly posted or it belonged to another. In order for us to prove that, we have to have a lot of evidence to do. And in an instance where there is so much land involved and it's so hard for people to properly post or to inform people that it is private land, it is virtually impossible for us to police.
State troopers are 50 miles away, Fish and Game's 50 miles away. And a lot of times when they do come in, they just don't have really the access vehicles to go up there.
We've had trespass where people find that they can be in this public area for a certain amount of time without being bothered by any law enforcement, any officials, and so on. And it turns into, well, hey, if I'm here and nobody's bothering me, then they go through and they'll construct cabins, they'll construct, campsites, they'll build elaborate buildings, and so on, and actually try and start businesses and so on. This is one of our former workers down in the Golcana River. The numerous sport fishermen that go there to catch fish, they catch fillet and then they just discard the carcasses right there. The village of Golcana takes their drinking water from this river just downstream from where this picture was taken at.
Where we have our fish camp, we have no trespass sign. That doesn't mean anything to them. They don't read, so they just come down and hop into the fish wheel and take a look around, even take a fish if they have to.
With millions of acres to manage, vast distances between law enforcement and violators, and the subsistence lifestyle of the Native people at stake, everyone at the Trespass Summit agreed on one thing. The solution of the trespass problem will not be easy to achieve. Participants also agreed that this summit was a necessary first step towards solving the problem. Communication between all parties involved is crucial to the success of any plan designed to curb illegal trespass.
This summit, bringing all the major players together, be it Bureau of Land Management, Department of Natural Resources, the Alaska State Troopers, or Ahtna, the #1 native landowner here, brings all the issues to a head and lets everyone aware of the issues. And I think that in itself is the #1 thing that has happened from this meeting, is everybody is made aware of all the trespass issues, whether it be from Ahtna, whether it be from a private native landowner such as myself or another landowner. This brings trespass into a new light.
I think what it is that the people that sell the permits and hunting license and stuff, like in this area, like in Game Unit 13, the Ahtna region, they ought to get an educational thing or have a map shown to when you get your license, that you read this thing before you get your license about where Ahtna lands are, state lands are, and private land. read all that. Once you acknowledge where they're at and stuff, and you know, sign your name on it, that will help a lot with the fishing game. That way, you get caught out there on Ahtna land or something, you can't say you didn't know. So that'll help all the way around with the fishing game officers, Ahtna land officers. So it's an automatic thing. You'll get prosecuted. Once you sign, you acknowledge that you know where the boundaries were before you got your hunting license.
There's no question that trespassing and misuse of easements is an ongoing and destructive problem throughout native-owned land in Alaska. The answer to this problem is complex and reaches across several different governmental agencies. The Trespass Summit at Glen Allen was the first step toward the inevitable marathon of meetings and discussions that will be needed to reach a fair and equitable solution to the trespass issue. Until then, the indigenous people of this region will continue as best they can to live their lives along the highway that connected Alaska to the world and forever change the wilderness that was Ahtna country.
I always say, what if my grandparents ever came out of their graves and took one look, I'm sure they'd want to go back. I don't think they'd want to be around to see what we have to go through.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. Hello once again to our new viewers in the state of Washington. So nice to have you with us. And thank you for joining us for another Heartbeat Alaska. It's a pleasure bringing this program to you. I'm Jeannie Green. For all of us here, God bless you. We'll see you again next week.
It's Heartbeat Alaska. Alaska, you can hear it from Sitka to Barrow. Gather around for Jeannie's show.